my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Good evening, everybody. You're watching State of the Nation tonight on GB News with me, Matt Goodwin. On tonight's show, is Britain becoming the land of injustice and unfairness, which seems to be putting immigrants and foreigners above our own British people? Travel chaos for thousands of commuters today. Britain's busiest airport, Heathrow, was shut down. Will our national economy suffer? I'll be talking to a top expert about that. Now, with only 41% of young people saying they're proud to be British while mass immigration reaches record highs, is it no wonder that Britain is divided? I'll be talking to a top policy expert on how we fix this crisis. Plus, get this, a Home Office contractor has reportedly been sacked for sharing a post made by Reform UK MP Richard Tice in a WhatsApp group chat. I'm going to be speaking to him directly tonight on State of the Nation about his dismissal. That's State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, starts right now. Now, I'll also be joined tonight by my top panel, senior reporter at Guido Fawkes, Ellie Wheatley, and journalist Zoe Grunewald. As ever, let me know your views at gbnews.com/your say, and of course you can reach out over at X at GoodwinMJ. But now it's time for the News Bulletin with Sophia Wensler.
Matt, thank you. It's just gone 8 o'clock. These are your headlines. Heathrow Airport has restarted some flights tonight and it hopes to run a full service tomorrow, while restrictions on overnight flights have been temporarily lifted to help ease congestion. Is after a fire at a nearby electrical substation forced Europe's busiest airport into shutdown. More than 1,300 flights have been cancelled or diverted, affecting over 200,000 passengers and leaving planes and crews in the wrong locations. Counter-terrorism police are now leading an investigation into the blaze, though they say there's no indication of foul play. Speaking earlier, the Heathrow Airport CEO apologised for the shutdown.
First of all, what I'd like to do is to apologize to the many people who have had their travel affected during the day-to-day. We are very sorry about all the inconvenience. I hope people appreciate that we do not close down the airport unless we have severe safety concerns. That's why we do it, and that's what has happened today. We've been working tirelessly to get the operation back into running, and that's what's now happening.
To the US now, where Donald Trump has said Russia is only fearful of NATO with the US as a member. In a news conference from the Oval Office today, the US president claimed NATO was gone until I came along. Meanwhile, Mr. Trump said he thinks there will be a full ceasefire that will take place pretty soon between Ukraine and Russia. It comes as the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has today told non-EU countries and EU chiefs it was clear Vladimir Putin was trying to delay a ceasefire deal with Ukraine. That was during a phone call. In other news, a man who took a bomb into a Leeds hospital intending to kill as many nurses as possible has been jailed for life. Mohammed Farouk has been jailed at Sheffield Crown Court for a minimum term of 37 years. Farouk, who was a trainee nurse, was last year found guilty of attempting to launch an IS-inspired suicide attack using a homemade bomb on the hospital where he worked in 2023. He was arrested outside the maternity ward of St James's Hospital after revealing he had a gun, saying that he felt like killing everyone. Now, Tommy Robinson has lost a High Court bid to challenge his segregation in prison over fears he'd be killed by another inmate. He was moved to a closed wing at Wood Hill after intelligence suggested a prisoner serving life was planning to attack him. His lawyers argued his isolation breaches human rights and is harming his mental health. But the court heard he enjoys various privileges behind bars and has no arguable claim. And more than 5,000 migrants have now arrived in the UK after crossing the English Channel so far this year. That's according to the latest figures. Some 341 people made the journey in 6 boats yesterday, bringing the total this year so far to 5,025. This is the earliest point in the year that crossings have reached the 5,000 mark since data on Channel crossings was first reported in 2018. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Matt.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to State of the Nation tonight with me, Matt Goodwin. Now, I don't know about you, but one thing that I've always believed unites the British people is a sense of fairness. I look at millions of hard-working, tax-paying, law-abiding Brits, and I think, however, today they're being taken for a ride. In Britain today, more than 1 million foreigners are claiming working-age benefits. And one thing we've learned this week, remarkably, households in Britain that contain at least one foreign national who are claiming benefits have received more than £7.5 billion in universal credit in 1 year. To put that in perspective, that's enough for 25 million winter fuel payments for British pensioners. Remarkably, some 40 nationalities in Britain, unbelievable, 40 nationalities, especially people from Congo, Iraq, Afghanistan, Algeria, Eritrea and Syria, are now claiming benefits at a greater rate than the British people, sometimes 4 times the rate. How is this fair or just in a modern civilised society? And you can see this shocking sense of injustice in many other areas of our national life too, like social housing, where it seems to me that once again the British people are at the back of the queue. When it comes to crime, foreign nationals, as we've also learned in recent weeks, thanks to freedom of information requests, are significantly more likely to not only be arrested, but also convicted of serious crimes, especially rape and sexual assault. Is it fair, I ask again, that the British people are being asked to subsidise people who are not only extracting billions of pounds from our national economy, who have become a net fiscal cost, not a net fiscal benefit, but are also more likely than the British people to commit crimes? And how is it fair that British pensioners have had their winter fuel payments taken away to save £1.5 billion a year, while our hapless politicians in the British state are wasting at least £5.5 billion a year on illegal migrants and asylum seekers who are entering our country, breaking our laws, in a system that our politicians refuse to fix? Between welfare payments for foreign nationals and the spiralling bill that is coming through our border crisis, you, British taxpayers, are currently paying somewhere in the region of £13 billion a year, or £250 million every week. The numbers are enormous, mind-boggling. And do you know what? These are not just statistics. What they reflect, let's be clear about this, are political choices that are being taken by people in Westminster who we elect to work on our behalf. Instead of being treated fairly, many people out there feel they're no longer being prioritised in their own country. And do you know what? I think they're right to feel that way, because treating your own people this way is the very opposite, in my view, of what it means to be British. As always, let me know your views at gbnews.com/yoursay. Hit me up on X at GoodwinMJ. But joining me now in the panel, my top panel is senior reporter at Guido Fawkes, Ellie Wheatley, and journalist Zoe Grunewald. Ellie, We've had a series of stories over the last couple of weeks about foreign nationals taking $7.5 billion from the welfare system. You know, the numbers are enormous. At the same time, Labour are now about to preside over $5 billion of cuts to the welfare state, much of which is going to hit British pensioners, disabled people, the poor. There is a sense of unfairness running through this country now, is there not?
Yes, I mean, look, it's not just welfare reforms. You see the family farm tax, for example, that's expected to hopefully rake in about £500 million a year. At the same time, we're spending £500 million a year on foreign workers, etc. So you can see that there is a sense of unfairness. But at the same time, we also spent £78 billion on universal credit in total. So that's 10% going to foreign nationals, but that's probably around the population in the UK anyway. So there's that to look at. Now, the thing is that these welfare reforms that Labour's pushing, you know, to get people back into work, all sound very good and well. But at the same time, they're pushing plans and bills that's actually going to clobber businesses. So, for example, the Employment Rights Bill, that hurts British businesses, British employers, because not only are 2/3 of SMEs, for example, saying that actually they're going to cut back on hiring, they're not going to employ future workers, but how do you expect to bring 1.2 million people back into work when there's only 800,000 vacancies and you're actually just clobbering British businesses and British employers?
Yeah, absolutely. Zoe, you're close to the Labour Party. You've got friends in the Labour Party. If I could just ask, we hear a lot about the welfare cuts. We hear a lot about the necessity of making these cuts. Is there not, though, a sense within the Labour Party that, hang on, these numbers are beginning to look obscene? The amount that we are spending on, let's be frank, people who are breaking our laws versus the amount that we're now going to gut out of the welfare system, which should be going perhaps to people who are disabled, our pensioners have already lost their winter fuel payments. Even on the Labour benches, is there not a sense that this is completely obscene?
I think there's division in the Labour ranks over this. So there is part of the party, and that is probably the part of the party that is closer to the government, so closer to Keir Starmer and the team around him, who are worried about immigration, who are worried about the rising welfare costs, who want to see people be pushed back into work through removing some of their benefits. But there is also a large portion of the Labour Party who are very uncomfortable with some of the measures announced and actually want to see Labour take aim at what they believe is actually the wealth inequality that has spiralled in this country post pandemic, but also through the austerity years. You know, they look at the gutting of public services, but also the fact that, you know, the government lost 21 billion to COVID fraud. There have been tax cuts for the wealthy throughout the Conservative years. The government spent 37 billion on a failed test and trace programme. And meanwhile, during COVID, the richest 5% in this country continued to make gains while everybody else suffered with wage stagnation and job insecurity. So I think there is a part of the Labour Party that actually want to see the government focus on that, focus on trying to get the money back from those people, rather than going after disabled, sick, immigrants, pensioners, these people who are more vulnerable.
Ellie, it seems to me that there is a very real divide within the Labour Party, as Zoe said. You've got the sort of Lord Glasman, Blue Labour school of thought who are saying, look, we've got to get real about immigration, we've got to bring the numbers down. But at the same time, you've got a lot of more liberal left cosmopolitan Labour MPs who are saying, no, actually, immigration, that's fine, we'll keep wasting billions on this. Well, of course,
I mean, they have this issue where they're trying to, I mean, so, for example, reform, right? They're obviously getting a lot of favourability in the polls on terms of immigration. And you see the red wall voters, sort of, it's almost like a upside down shoehorn trend. So I was spoken to a few Labour backbenchers, and they say that actually immigration is a real concern that we've got to be, making a stand on. And, we saw a couple of weeks ago, it was actually a GBNews report where Starmer wrote a letter to his cabinet minister saying, it's not racist to talk about immigration, we must talk about immigration. But at the same time, you do have those on the left who are sort of much more liberal in their approach to immigration. But I think that quietly being pushed down by Starmer.
Sure. The other thing we saw this week, Zoe, is the Labour List survey of Labour Party members, and they were asked what's the primary threat to the Labour Party as far as they see it, and it wasn't the Tories. They said it was reform. Now, if you look at the immigration debate, you look at the welfare debate, there's an enormous opportunity here for Nigel Farage and Reform to step into that and to campaign on that. But at the same time, there's also a growing awareness on the Labour benches within the Labour movement that actually this reform problem could quickly spiral into an all-out assault.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think there's a real concern in the party that if the government don't deliver the change that they have promised, the platform of change that they stood on at the election, that voters will indeed shift away. And look at how the Conservative Party are doing. I mean, it's a barely functioning opposition. Of course, reform is more of a threat to Labour. You know, Nigel Farage.
Although we did see Kemi Badenoch come out on net zero.
I mean, do you think she's going to last?
But she didn't say whether or not she'd actually just scrap the net zero target or not.
Hopeless.
She set a new date. I thought that speech was actually sort of rather disappointing for Tory supporters.
And you talk to politicians, MPs every day. You're sort of plugged in. I mean, what's the reaction on the Tory side to that speech?
Listen, I think they thought it was a step in the right direction. I mean, the line is it's an announcement that has to be made. You know, net zero is not achievable by 2050. And I was going, well, OK, but what's the solution? And hilariously, she unveiled this new policy programme scheme that was basically what her shadow environment team to look at the policy. Isn't that really what they should be doing anyway? Anyway, so I think it was slightly disappointing for some people. But again, they think that they've got time, which they do. But actually, people are going to get pretty bored pretty quickly and pretty frustrated if she doesn't come up with some proper policies soon.
Yeah, there's also growing disillusionment, I think it's fair to say, in that survey of Labour politicians, of which are most popular among the ranks, with Rachel Reeves, the most unpopular member of the Labour government by some way. Keir Starmer not doing too well. I think Angela Rayner and Ed Miliband top the list. I mean, give us a sense of what the mood music is like within the Labour camp at the moment around Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves, because my working assumption is the Chancellor's not going to get to the end of the year. You know, she's presiding over an economy. We're going to talk about it in a bit on the show, but she seems to be blaming everybody else apart from the government that's actually presiding over the economy. I mean, to what extent do you think Rachel Reeves is safe in her position?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I'm hearing mixed things. I would say some of the newer MPs are just really keen not to kind of upset the ranks. You know, they have trust in the government. They want to keep going. They think any infighting would be very, very bad for the party. But I think there are some more established Labour MPs who are just concerned about the direction this government's taking, whether it will actually result in any change, let alone positive change. And I think the big question is who replaces Rachel Reeves? You know, and that's where you could see a real kind of bun fight over, is it somebody more on the supply side? Is it somebody who takes a more kind of Keynesian approach to the economy? Is it someone from the soft left? And that's when you see the worst of Labour's factional infighting come out to play.
Well, Ellie, I imagine it would be Wes Streeting or somebody who fancies themselves as a successor to Starmer. But also, what is Labour's response going to be to this reform issue that we've just been discussing, with the survey suggesting Labour now see reform, not the Tories, as a main threat?
Well, again, it definitely comes back to immigration. They've said they've made a lot of noise about it,
but they're not actually done really anything on immigration.
I mean, immigration is not even one of Starmer's 5 missions for, you know, the plan for change, whatever that really meant. And of course, we've seen boat crossing numbers going up, etc.
Up 25% on last year.
Yeah, absolutely. And also there is the worry that reform is sort of targeting policies, for example, like Thames Water and nationalising that's an issue that a lot of backbenchers are going, isn't that something that we should be pushing forward?
And also the collapse of factories across northern England, which both Nigel Farage and Richard Tice have made
I think
a lot of noise about.
They're sort of remaining rather quiet and letting the Tories and Reform fight amongst each other, especially in the locals, and sort of hoping that those, you know, the divide between the right, between Reform and the Tories, means that they basically come in on a second term.
Yeah, and that reminds me of the early 2010s. I mean, I remember giving talks to politicians about the rise of the UK Independence Party, and I remember Labour politicians saying, well, this is good for us because it's dividing the right. But actually, if you look at what's going to happen in those northern heartlands and Wales and coastal areas, northeast and so on, actually Labour's probably going to get a bit of a kicking as early as the local elections.
Yeah, because reform isn't just... I mean, I I think a lot of voters who like reform would describe themselves as being on the right, but there are also a lot who are protest voting because they are not happy with the centre ground.
Absolutely.
And especially if, you know, Keir Starmer keeps bringing the mantle to reform by talking about the same sort of issues, that only increases the salience of Nigel Farage and the Reform Party's policies.
Well, absolutely. Well, thank you to my panel for now, Ellie Wheatley and journalist Zoe Grunewald. After the break, travel chaos for thousands of people today, hundreds of thousands of people. Britain's busiest airport, Heathrow, was shut down all day. A remarkable indictment of our national infrastructure. But will the economy take a hit? We're going to be talking to a top economics expert to discuss that in a couple of minutes before that bombshell story about the chap who was sacked after sharing something that was tweeted by a Reform MP. See you shortly.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
You can smack, thwack, thump, and everyone's got a different definition of what it is.
I'm not an idiot.
Smacking
Most parents aren't idiots. They can draw a distinction between those. Lazy, shortcut parenting, and there's no case in which it's justified. Smacking spreads. So you smack one, they're going to smack their siblings. They're going to go into school and disagree with other children and give them a whack. And then what about, do you give proxy rights to teachers, nursery workers? No. No, you don't. So you love your child so much that you're going to smack them. Only you. It's special for you.
Hang on a minute, Anna May. Just so we're clear, Anna May, are you accusing Bev of being a bad mother or something here?
I'm saying I can't believe that in 2025 somebody would come on TV and defend doing something to a child that wouldn't be acceptable to a
Bev,
dog.
do you want to come back to that?
If you smack a dog in the street, Bev, if you smack a dog in the street,
somebody
is almost every parent is smacking their child, except they won't admit it. And so what you've developed by that sort of parenting, it is true, is you've developed a culture of shame, whereby parents might have that instinct, as mammals will have, whether it's a monkey or a cat or a lion. In the natural world, the adult, the parent of that young cub, whatever it is, will occasionally.
What are we talking about this? Are we talking about hurting children with your hand and also not even having a standard? Paediatricians are saying don't do it. And also this argument, I know what's going to come next. You're going to say, oh, the police could be involved. Aren't they going to be too busy to do this? Guess what? Children can't dial 999, particularly very young ones.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to State of the Nation tonight with me, Matt Goodwin, right here on GB News. Now, travel chaos for hundreds of thousands of people today. Britain's busiest airport, Heathrow, has been shut down all day following a nearby fire at an electrical substation. Although reopening for limited flights, the airport is expecting disruption for days to come. With counter-terrorism investigating the earlier fire, speculation is going to be ongoing about what's behind it. Now, this comes as well as the latest growth forecast for our national economy has been halved for 2025 as Chancellor Rachel Reeves gears up for her spring statement next week. And it's likely that she's going to try and blame the drop on global economics and, of course, Donald Trump imposing those tariffs. Indeed, Rachel Reeves likes to blame everybody for what's happening to the UK economy, except for the people who are actually in charge of the UK economy. Now, on a day when growth forecasts have been reduced, what impact is Heathrow's shutdown going to have on the national economy? Well, I'm delighted to be joined tonight in the studio by Michael Simmons, economics editor at The Spectator. Michael, what impact is this likely to have on an economy that is already looking pretty wobbly?
Well, this is something that we can't have afforded to have happened. When we've had the economy shrinking in January, and when it's not shrinking, it's just been flat. When things are as tight as that, even something that's one day of disruption that you've said could turn into more, it could have a real effect on GDP growth. We've already seen it in the stock market today. Shares in aviation companies, in airlines, in travel companies are already down. It will be a few months till we see the real effect of this, but it's not going to be good.
Michael, we've actually got an update on the situation. Let's just look at Heidi Alexander for a minute.
The reason why the Counter-Terrorism Command of the Metropolitan Police are working with the London Fire Brigade on identifying the causes of this incident at the substation is because it took place next to a critical piece of national infrastructure. The Counter-Terrorism Command have specific capabilities and capacities that mean that they are used to conducting investigations at pace, and it's really important that we identify the cause of this quickly. There are no suggestions at the moment of foul play, but you will appreciate the investigation keeps an open mind, and our priority is identifying the cause as soon as possible.
Michael, the fact of the matter is this is a national embarrassment, isn't it? This is a critical piece of infrastructure, as Heidi Alexander just said, but it's sort of blown a hole in the idea that we're running a sort of competent, functioning state.
Well, yeah, exactly. This is the other problem. This is going to dent confidence of international investors. Why would you invest in a country where its biggest port, biggest airport, can't stay open because it's relied on one substation that's been taken out? I think there could be a longer-term effect as well, in that the Whitehall response to this will be regulation. And part of the problem with why we have stagnant growth is because, we have too much regulation around planning. And it's just obvious to me the response in government to this is going to be, we need rules to make sure this doesn't happen again. And, whilst there's an argument for that, we could just be adding more and more red tape. Indeed.
Well, more regulation, why not? Now, let's talk about that issue of stagnant growth. We're heading into this all-important spring statement. Rachel Reeves' popularity is plummeting out there in the country. I think it's safe to say that the economy is really teetering. We've seen those massive tax increases. We've seen spending cuts. We're likely to see a lot more of all of that this year. I think the question everyone out there is asking themselves tonight is, where on earth is this going? Are we heading into a major fiscal event? When is growth, if ever, going to appear? What are the options facing Rachel Reeves? Are we likely to see sweeping Labour-led austerity across public services? Because I don't think she can keep putting taxes up, because that's obviously stifling growth. I mean, where on earth are we heading here?
Well, this spring statement next week was only ever meant to be a spring forecast. There was not meant to be tax changes. There was not meant to be big spending changes. But Rachel Reeves' headroom against her ironclad fiscal rules to have debt falling by the end of the Parliament were blown away by the rise in borrowing costs at the start of the year. So she has to do something to recover that if she's going to stick to her rules, which she will do. Part of that will be the £5 billion in benefit savings that she thinks has come as part of this Liz Kendall reforms, although we won't see that till the OBR score things. I also understand that this concept of the spending envelope, which is, you say, how much we're going to spend this year up until a five-year period, we'll see cuts towards the end of that. So she may be able to say next week that immediately there is no cuts, there are no big tax changes, but towards the end of the Parliament, they're scheduled in to certainly not be growing with inflation.
Zoe Grunewald, the reality, though, is Rachel Reeves is being constrained by the enormous cost of our debt and the debt interest payments, the amount that we're paying to service our national credit card are through the roof. So what options does she have to fix this situation? Because, as I say, taxes can't go up. There's going to have to be dramatic public spending cuts. I don't think £5 billion is going to come close. I mean, what are we looking at here?
I think, unfortunately, we're looking at austerity. So there was a briefing last week that there would be maybe cuts to public spending, specific non-protected departmental cuts of maybe around 7%. The Labour government has insisted this wouldn't, or Labour sources have insisted this wouldn't amount to austerity because it's only about half as deep as what George Osborne did. But, I mean, the thing about austerity is you can only cut back once, and if the state doesn't grow back, you're still cutting back. You're still cutting an austere state. So you're absolutely right. They've ruled out tax rises. They've ruled out relaxing their fiscal rules. We've actually seen precedent for this across Europe. So we know that Europe have relaxed their fiscal rules to allow for borrowing for defence spending. We know that Germany had a vote on this as well. France are anticipating a wealth tax to pay for defence. If Labour wanted to do that, they could. There is an argument for it. We're facing new insecure times internationally. I think there were some in the party that hoped they might be brave there, but they are absolutely staying within the confines of their pre-election pledges.
But Ellie Wheatley, isn't the issue here that nobody has the answer to our growth challenge? That whether it's Labour, whether it's the Tories, nobody can figure out what the path to growth is. So the answer is basically take the tax burden as high as we can, start to cut into public services, avoid the big questions about national debt, about net zero, and just try and keep the show on the road. But nobody seems to have an answer to the growth riddle.
Yeah, I mean, you could start with not delivering the most tax hiking budget in modern history, because, of course, that's where a lot of Reeves's problems came into effect. So when she announced that employers' national insurance tax was going to increase, a whole bunch of businesses started slashing jobs. Companies have stopped hiring, which of course...
Well, she crashed confidence. Confidence fell off a cliff.
Absolutely. Confidence fell off a cliff. Investors aren't investing here. Why would you? So I think that's where you start. You start by reversing a whole load of those tax hikes to bring British business back into the UK and bring back confidence.
Michael Simmons, we also read this week that millionaires are leaving the country at record rates, unlike other advanced economies. There's obviously a lack of confidence in the UK among wealth creators, entrepreneurs. Now, we don't want to fall into the trap of just talking Britain down all the time. This is a great country with a great economy, or foundations for a great economy. But what should we be doing to get there? What is the interplay of policies that we need to get us out of this status quo? Should we, as Ellie says, be slashing tax across the board, slashing corporation tax? Should we be gutting net zero? Should we be thinking about, an immediate pause on all foreign aid? I mean, what's the answer here?
Well, I think Labour faces essentially a binary choice on this. It's that you do what they intended to do when they came into office, which is go for growth, and you do that by deregulation. You do that by forgetting about net zero and putting GDP above the environment, at least until we're in a period where we're growing again. Okay. Or you go down the tax route. Now, it comes from the left all the time. Oh, tax these billionaires, tax the millionaires. As you say, they're leaving. If we want to have an honest argument about putting up tax, you have to say that means putting up income tax by 2% on the average earner. Now, no politician, no chancellor is going to want to go for that. But if you're not going to be serious about the growth route, that's the only other option.
And what about this issue around the growing interplay between mass migration on the one hand and our declining productivity and GDP per capita on the other? Because Labour politicians have told us now for years massive immigration equals economic growth and prosperity. But actually, we've never had as much immigration as we've got today. Productivity is going backwards. GDP per capita is going backwards. It's not adding up.
Well, it's certainly, it has been true in points in history that if you grow the country's population, you can grow GDP and GDP per capita. But as you point out, that's not been happening certainly recently in Britain. So if we're not, if you wanted to have an open door policy, you have to bring in people who are productive and you have to have policies to make sure they're productive. But as you know, we were talking earlier on the show, that's just not the case. So if you want to sustain the levels of immigration that we've seen for the last few years, you have to accept the costs that come with that. It's not something that answers, that's just going to bung on growth.
Well, indeed, whatever happened to that high-skill migration that Boris Johnson talked about? Well, in a moment, just under a quarter of primary school students in this country, get this, do not have English as their first language. Nearly a quarter. Unbelievable. Is it no wonder that young people don't have a sense of national identity? I'll be talking to a top expert on how we fix this crisis in just a couple of minutes.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Low pressure remains mostly in charge of Western Europe, bringing heavy showers and thunderstorms, bringing in a further risk of flooding. The odd shower across Madeira and Tenerife, but the bulk of the rain affecting Portugal and Spain, where already they have had most of the rain through the week. Still plenty of showers elsewhere across Europe, and mostly dry across parts of Greece, and remaining dry here with the best of the temperatures, but elsewhere still remaining largely showery, and this is limiting temperatures at around the mid to high teens.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here with an exclusive opportunity just for you, our incredible GB News viewers. We're giving you the opportunity to win a VIP studio tour right here at GB News HQ. Plus, you'll also get to meet yours truly. It's easy to enter, just head to gbnews.com/community competition and follow the easy steps. Don't miss out, enter now, and I'll see you soon at GB News. Full T's and C's apply.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back to State of the Nation tonight with me, Matt Goodwin, right here on GB News. Now, half of Gen Z, the Zoomers, think that Britain is a racist country, with only 41% of young people today saying they are proud to be British, and only 15% believing that the country is united. These are shocking figures. What on earth's going on? From a stagnating economy, an ageing society and continuing small boat arrivals, making a mockery of our claim to be a sovereign, self-governing, independent nation, many things in our society seem to now be unravelling and moving out of our control. Shockingly, get this, at the same time, just under 1/4 of primary school students, nearly 1 in 4, don't have English as their first language. Isn't that utterly remarkable? Very sad. It's no wonder that young people today, given all this, feel a sense of national identity. Well, to discuss these challenges and a lot more, we're joined by senior researcher at the Prosperity Institute, Guy Dampier, who writes regularly on these issues in the national newspapers. I should say that Guy works at the Prosperity Institute, which is owned by the Legatum Group, and the group is also one of the lead investors in the holding company of GBNews. That said, Guy, you've written in The Telegraph that the answer to Britain's illegal migration crisis is a Trump-style plan to enable deportations. Just tell us a bit about that and how you think this could be applied to Britain.
Well, I think we have a major problem with illegal immigration in this country, and that doesn't just mean the people that are coming across the channel. It also means mostly people that are overstaying their visas and staying for a long time. Exactly how many people are in the country is very hard to tell because the Home Office deliberately doesn't look at this. Estimates vary from around 700,000, 1.2 million, but in truth, those are mostly old estimates. So we could be
sorry, Guy. Sorry, just because I'm beginning to think I'm going insane in this country. The Home Office does not look at specific numbers of illegal migrants in this country. Is that correct?
We don't have a Home Office estimate for how many illegal immigrants are in this country.
So the estimates that I've seen online from the Pew Research Centre and others suggest that it's somewhere between 750,000 and 1.2 million, which is, you know, mind-boggling. I think we had that report in the Telegraph recently that 1 in 12 Londoners are illegal migrants, or 1 in 12 people in London, I should say, are illegal migrants. OK, so, look, lots of people out there, heads in their hands. Let's just not complain about it. How do we fix it? I want to fix this illegal migration crisis. Tell us about this plan that you've written about.
Absolutely. So my suggestion is this is an enormously difficult subject. We don't really genuinely have the state capacity to do this. Immigration enforcement in this country has always been underfunded. So what I suggest is that we adopt a plan from America, from the Center for Immigration Studies there, and we say instead of collecting fines ourselves, we will enable civil enforcement bodies to collect them for us. And we increase the amount of the fine, and we take the fine from the people who are employing or renting to the illegals. So what this essentially is doing is allowing bailiffs, like the kind of bailiffs you get if someone, you know, doesn't pay their debts, to go in, to find these people, to bring them to court, and then to get them removed from the country. And when they achieve that, they get the full value of the fine, and that fine is extracted from the people who've benefited from the illegal immigrants, which means...
So it's basically forcing the private sector to step in and play a role, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to use the profit motive. We're going to use the free market. We're going to shift the burden from the state having to do this and allow the free market to do its work alongside the state.
And the other thing that I've often talked about on this show, you know, my view on this is if we're going to get our arms around this crisis, we need to leave the ECHR. We need to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. We need to reform, if not repeal, the Human Rights Act, which entrenches the ECHR into UK domestic law. Then we need an active deterrent, otherwise known as not throwing welfare at people who break our laws when they're entering the country. All of that required? Am I broadly right on that, or do we need something else added into the mix?
I think that's right. We've got to get rid of those international laws that prevent us from controlling our own borders. We've got to get rid of, as you say, the drag factors, things like access to welfare, access to social housing. Officially, of course, lots of people aren't supposed to be able to get access to this, but in reality, you can. No recourse to public funds has various exemptions. And we also know that lots of illegal people are able to live within the system because we just don't check enough to find this kind of stuff. People slip between the cracks.
Yeah, with soft touch Britain. Ellie Wheatley, I mean, Guy's right on this, isn't he? Bring in the private sector, let's get some other actors involved, because I'll be frank, I don't actually trust the state to deal with this problem. I think the British state has become so incompetent, as we're seeing with things like Heathrow today. I don't actually think they can deal with the illegal migration crisis. We don't even know who's in the country.
Well, that's absolutely right. I think, you know, most things the private sector does a better job at enacting efficient change than the state. But it is an interesting point. But I don't think it's just immigration that is leading Gen Z and British people to not feel a sense of patriotism. It's also the fact that, you know, a lot of people don't have purpose. You know, 1 in 8 young people out of work, young adults are out of work. So if you don't have a purpose, you're not proud of, you don't have a job to be proud of. You don't necessarily have pride in your country. It's difficult to get on the housing ladder, etc. All these sort of things play a part. But I also think it's worrying because in that report, 11% of Gen Z responded that they wouldn't be happy to fight in a war. And in this particular climate, we must have people being patriotic and wanting to fight for our nation as we have done in the past.
Zoe Grunewald, from a sort of Labour left perspective, what is the answer to this illegal migration crisis? Because Guy is saying, look, clearly the state is not capable of managing this. We can see that in the numbers. Maybe it's time that we invite others to play a role, like the private sector. But where's Labour and the left on this?
So I think there are a few things. I think the first is that you have to address the complete under-resourcing, underfunding and attempt to just basically shove the asylum system in a corner by the previous government and say, we don't want anything to do with that. They allowed cases to pile up, they didn't put any money in it, and now we have... And, you know, it isn't just the asylum system, it's also that the court backlogs don't help with this. All the things, you know, all the things that austerity have done to this country mean the state is incredibly slow at processing things. It doesn't have enough police, it doesn't have enough resources, you know, across the board, not just with asylum. But I think definitely putting money into the asylum system so cases are sped up so that people can have their claims.
But if I just was to press you a bit on that for a minute, OK? We know of all the cases that are being looked at under the Labour government, two-thirds that are given initial decisions, two-thirds of illegal migrants who apply for asylum get it. So is the issue really about resources, or is the issue that we have a completely wrong incentive structure in this country whereby people know if they arrive on a small boat, there is a very good chance, even though they're breaking our laws, that they will be allowed to stay?
So I don't think we should have people coming over on small boats, quite clearly. I think we need proper processes and routes in place, and that involves international cooperation. I mean, one of the things that happened when we left the EU is we stopped having a returns agreement with Europe.
It wasn't working when we had it, though.
But we can see, you can just look at the graphs and see how small boats shot up after we left the EU. I mean, clearly that was a factor at play. So I think what we need is international cooperation. We need to fix the broken asylum system. We do need safe and legal routes, but we do also need a border policy that is fair for the people in this country and is acquiescent with our international obligations.
Well, I'm glad that somebody is thinking about the people in this country and that sense of fairness. Now, after the break, this is a bombshell story. A Home Office contractor, get this, has been sacked, reportedly, for sharing a post made by Reform UK MP Richard Tice in a WhatsApp group chat. He's going to be joining us live, direct, in a couple of minutes. You are going to want to hear this story. See you shortly.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It has been a remarkably dry March so far across the UK, but it's all changed this weekend. Cloudier skies, spells of rain or showers moving through, and as a result, feeling significantly cooler. We've already seen the isobars tighten up across the UK ahead of this area of low pressure. That's increased the breeze as we've gone through the last couple of days. A mild breeze, but increasingly an unsettled one, with spells of rain moving north across the country. The most persistent wet weather overnight, northern England into Scotland and Northern Ireland, although even here there'll be some drier interludes. Further south, eventually turning drier, some clear spells, but with a lot of cloud and that breeze, it is going to be a mild start to Saturday, certainly a frost-free start, a marked contrast compared with the sunny but chilly mornings of the week so far. Now, we do start with plenty of dry weather across England and Wales, although showers couldn't be ruled out just about anywhere. I think West Wales, North West England seeing some sunshine early on. Otherwise, a lot of cloud blankets the UK. And we've got two areas of rain moving north, one affecting western Scotland and western parts of Northern Ireland, another one affecting eastern parts of Scotland, in between some showers. And really, it's a slow-moving situation as we go through the day. I think that for Scotland and Northern Ireland, we'll see further spells of rain or showers, the wettest weather likely for western Scotland, the far north and Northern Ireland. Elsewhere, skies do brighten into the afternoon. There'll be some sunshine. Some places will get away with a dry afternoon, but there'll also be these slow-moving, heavy downpours, particularly across central parts of the UK. Where we do get sunshine, 17, 18 Celsius possible, so still some warmth, but it is turning cooler gradually through the weekend. And after a gloomy start to Sunday with some mistiness around eastern coasts, it's going to be another day of sunny spells and some spells of rain or showers. The showers heaviest towards southern parts of England. And we keep the showers going into next week, but it's going to turn drier for many.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
It's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This spring, the Chancellor steps up to the dispatch box to make a statement. But what kind of statement will it be?
Taxes, spending, growth, benefits, cost of living. What's changing? And more importantly, how does it affect you?
Does she have the headroom to make headway?
Will it ease the squeeze or tighten the grip?
Will businesses boom or struggle to survive?
And does the spring statement have real impact, or is it just political posturing?
GB News brings you the analysis that matters. Just what it means for your money, your home, your future.
The Spring Statement 2025, Wednesday on GB News.
Welcome back to State of the Nation tonight on GB News with me, Matt Goodwin. Now, this is quite a story. A Home Office contractor has reportedly been sacked for sharing a post made by Reform UK MP Richard Tice in a WhatsApp group chat. Gary Costin, who spent 15 years working for a government contractor, was fired after a complaint about the message he shared, which raised concerns about a Muslim lobbying group. He was subsequently dismissed by the firm that was contracted by the Home Office, despite the company accepting that he had not intended to cause any offence. Joining me tonight is former Home Office contractor Gary Costin. Gary, thank you for coming on the show. I'm going to be honest with you, when I read this story, I'm shocked on a daily basis in this country, but I was really shocked when I read this story. Just tell our viewers, if you can, briefly, what on earth has happened to you?
Good evening. Basically, last April, this WhatsApp post was sent to me. And I put it on another post, which was with 12 of my colleagues and my peers. A couple of days after I'd actually posted it, I was called in the office when I was meant to be going away on a charter and asked the question, did I actually post this post? And I said, yes. So they said, well, in that case, we need to investigate this. And they suspended me there and then. I then spent... Sorry,
Gary. Please carry on, Gary.
I then spent the next 6 months being investigated, had a disciplinary meeting planned around June, and that was cancelled. They then decided to interview supposedly all the other colleagues on the WhatsApp group, but they managed to actually find, I think, 7 or 8 out of the 12, although they had stated from the start they knew who everyone was. And
Gary, if I may, you were suspended and essentially then sacked. Is that correct?
No, I wasn't sacked until November the 7th this year.
Right.
Last year.
Okay.
So they kept me waiting for 6-7 months.
And the official reason that you were given by the firm, is it Mighty?
Mighty.
Mighty. The official reason given was around what exactly?
Basically, in the end, although the allegation from the whistleblower was that I was a racist, a bully, I was inciting racial hate amongst the Muslim colleagues in the workplace, which I never did, was basically they couldn't get me for any of that in the end, and said I'd broken their social media policy and discipline policy by posting this. Although, as far as I was concerned, WhatsApp wasn't social media. It's a messaging platform.
And just to be clear, what you did do was share a note from Richard Tice that was already on social media about a sort of Muslim lobbying group within the civil service, and you had made a brief comment saying something like "uh-oh," as in, that could be interpreted multiple ways. And that's what... Pardon me?
I didn't put anything whatsoever on that post.
Right, you didn't put anything on the post. That was already there. So you simply shared it into a WhatsApp group chat with colleagues, and you because of that, you ended up losing your job. Gary, just before we move on, just what impact has this had on your life? Because I read this and I thought, are we living in Great Britain here, or are we living in the Soviet Union? I mean, this is possibly the most Orwellian story I've come across in a long time, which is saying something given some of the things that we've seen in this country over the last 2 years. I mean, what impact has this had on your life?
Well, it's affected my marriage. Thankfully, My wife and I have now got over this, but we had a real tough time of it. I was worried at one stage of losing the flat that I live in, that I rent. I've had to sell my car to help pay bills. I nearly went, well, I did go to the doctors to take antidepressants, but because I'm stubborn and I'd read about the antidepressants, I decided in the end not to, and basically got through it without that.
Well, Gary, Gary, we wanted to draw attention to this story so viewers can go and explore it for themselves, because I'm going to be frank, I think it's absolutely outrageous, everything that I've read. We do have a statement which has been shared by Mighty on other forums in the media, and they've said, we don't comment on individual cases, but there is zero tolerance for racism or discrimination of any type in our business. Of course, that is a statement that Gary Costin would strongly oppose, and we have reached out to the Home Office and we're awaiting their comment on this case, but it is clearly, I think, absolutely outrageous. Well, I just want to thank my panel tonight, Ellie Wheatley and Zoe Grunwald, for coming in and sharing their thoughts, and our guests. That's all for tonight on State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin. It's been quite a episode, and I would just urge all of you at the end, and I don't usually do this, but please do go online and read that case of Gary Costin, because if there's anything that underlines a sense of unfairness and injustice in this country today, it is what on earth is happening to people like that. Anyway, see you next week. State of the Nation right here on GB News with me, Matt Goodwin. Stay safe.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It has been a remarkably dry March so far across the UK, but it's all changed this weekend. Cloudier skies, spells of rain or showers moving through, and as a result, feeling significantly cooler. We've already seen the isobars tighten up across the UK ahead of this area flow pressure. That's increased the breeze as we've gone through the last couple of days. A mild breeze, but increasingly an unsettled one, with swells of rain moving north across the country. The most persistent wet weather overnight, northern England into Scotland and Northern Ireland, although even here there'll be some drier interludes. Further south, eventually turning drier, some clear spells, but with a lot of cloud and that breeze, it is going to be a mild start to Saturday. Certainly a frost-free start, a marked contrast compared with the sunny but chilly mornings of the week so far. Now, we do start with plenty of dry weather across England and Wales, although showers couldn't be ruled out just about anywhere. I think West Wales, North West England seeing some sunshine early on. Otherwise, a lot of cloud blankets the UK. And we've got two areas of rain moving